Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
Oh shit. Double think. Double think. Okay. Welcome to the Frank America podcast. I'm your host, Frank America, and this is episode 4. Bum bum, bum bum, ksh, bum bum, bum bum, ksh. Today, we are going to discuss several things. We're going to read a little bit of the paper, talk about what's balderdash and what ain't. We're going to let my dog Teddy in. Hey, come on in, buddy. Yeah. And we're going to shoot the proverbial shilajit. We are going to chew upon the cud of existence. We're going to talk a little bit about these purported mud floods and Tartaria, which is this idea that the Holy Roman Empire never existed, and it was really this place called Tartaria, and it took place all over the world. I'm going to leave an interesting video, and I'm going to take notes. Let me get a pen and paper while I talk, so when I make a promise, I've got a little reference. Tartaria. Anyway, if you look at all these buildings across the USA, South America, Russia, I mean, you name it, the Ukraine, Eastern Europe, even Africa, there are these buildings, and they all look like they're designed by the same motherfucking people. Now, you know, as the story goes, like, for example, where a lot of these buildings purportedly came up in the mid-19th century. But this idea of Tartaria is that these buildings were already there. Go get it, T. They were already there, and they were just taken over and inhabited by newer and dumber people. And that around the time that this happened is when the New World Order, which is the name for the people that control the world, they won. They took over. They gained global, quote unquote, dominance, worldwide control. And it's a very interesting theory. I don't have too much to unpack because I've just started to delve into this idea in the last couple weeks, so it's a little bit new to talk about it. But I'm going to leave the best Tartaria video that I've found so far in the first link in the description below. And then you guys can tell me, you know, what you think, if it's any good or if it's balderdash. What else? So that's a really, it's far out. It's the most far out theory I've heard since Flat Earth. So I love entertaining these theories. It doesn't make them true, but I think that, as Aristotle said, it is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain an idea without believing it. And I hope that you guys are all educated. That's interesting too. It's like, what do you pay when you go to university? What do you pay? You pay tuition. So tuition is money that you pay professors who ask you to memorize shit they say and then regurgitate it on the test. And if you can't do that well, you are not educated. But riddle me this. What is the opposite of tuition? That's right, you clever chap, you. Intuition. So, I think that college education stymies our ability to use our intuition by relying solely on paying tuition. And as we talked about a little bit in the last podcast, this tuition is unforgivable debt. You cannot go bankrupt and void yourself of your college loan debt. So, not only is it a forced indoctrination camp that you pay for and you go into debt for, but you can't get out of debt. So say you major in finger painting, then you graduate and there's no good paying jobs in finger painting, you can't make any money, you declare bankruptcy. Well, all your credit card debt is forgiven and all your outstanding debts are forgiven except the tuition debt. Because you didn't use your intuition, you paid someone else to tell you how to think. Now, as someone who has a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, and who was encouraged to go for the doctorate but opted not to, it's easy for me to say don't go to college because I fucking went to graduate school and I'm a fucking master. So, it's this do as I say, not as I do. I think that if you're in my kind of situation and you got Big Papa Bucks who's going to pay for your college, fucking go. Major in humanities if you want to, but I would recommend business, economics, or engineering because they actually make money. But just if you don't have to pay for the college, go. And then a hack that we talked about a couple podcasts ago is go to a junior college or a community college for your first 2 years because it's all the same basic credits. Kick ass, get straight A's, literally kick ass, don't party too much, and then transfer to a notable name brand school. Then you'll only be 2 years of premier tuition in debt, which is easier to pay off than 4. One of my cousins went to Brown, and my uncle, my mom's sister's like, I'm fucking paying 100,000, whatever it is, 80,000 a year, so my fucking daughter can study pirates. She had a class in pirates at Brown. And he loved to bitch about that. And I think that that's very true. What did you major in? Pirates. All right. What can you do? Nothing. Well, I'm good at stealing. Well, we don't want you to work here. What else? I've been going to job interviews. I'm the classically overeducated and underpaid. It's like our whole generation is, and by our, I mean, millennials? We're all overeducated and underpaid. And all of our parents, and these are like gross stereotypes, but all of our parents like made more money than us, and then we got a better education and we can't make as much as they make. And it's so interesting how like the economic, cultural kind of carrot or way station, it's like it moves with the baby boomers. So like now you got all these like comedies, like geriatric comedies and like things appealing to the older generation. Like I just saw this Netflix show with Alan Arkin and Michael Douglas, and it's all like prostate jokes and, why are you busting my balls? Because they're the low-hanging fruit. And like, it's funny how what is funny and what is money is moving with that generation, not with ours. But it'll change. It'll change. And that's the same generation that was, indoctrinated in the Cold War and, duck and cover for the nuclear bomb is coming. Quick, get under your desk. Are you kidding me? Get under your desk. The nuclear bomb is coming. I'll take another note. An interesting video I watched was about how nukes are a hoax, and that actually it all came out of this comic book mythology. So that's the second promise I've made already. I got to be careful. But this idea of, so that generation they're wearing the signature of the moon landing and the jingoistic patriotism of space exploration as defined by NASA. And I love this generation. They are my mentors. And the cognitive dissonance is strong with them. And they are not in a position, typically speaking, gross generalization, to entertain notions about geocentric cosmology. They don't even know what geocentric and heliocentric means. If you don't and you're listening, geocentric is, geo means earth, centric is centered. So the earth is the center. Otherwise, heliocentric is the common cosmology. Helio from the Helios, the Greek or Roman, forgive me, I forget which one, sun god, and it's Helios-centered. So, they live in a heliocentric universe, and they went to the moon, and it's hard to displace those things. But even like when I talk to my dad about this shit, he's like, all right, whatever about the shape of the earth. All right, whatever about that we didn't go to the moon. Just fucking admit global warming exists. And it's like, that's like the last bastion, like the last stand, like the 300 is like fighting to make sure you believe in global warming. And this is what I told my mom. I was like, look, Mom, it's not good to club baby seals. Mom, it's not good to cut down the rainforest. We need oxygen to breathe. Mom, it's not good to do like sloppy offshore drilling that spills oil into the oceans. We don't want oil into the oceans. We care about our coral reefs. But that doesn't fucking mean global warming exists. In other words, I can be a fucking ecocentric, granola-chewing hippie who loves Pachamama and not believe in the United Nations carbon tax, which, is just a newer thing and like may or may not actually be trotted out. But basically when you exhale, that's carbon. So as one of my friends told me when I went to Burning Man back in 2012, like they're basically trying to lead to this place where they tax you for breathing, which is this whole idea that like everything you do is taxed. Like the land you live on is taxed, right? The name that you own, not that you are, the name that you own is taxed. And, some of these taxes are great. And I've talked about this. I want libraries. And, even though they're hospitals, even though they're largely drug peddling centers for big pharma, hospitals are still trauma care centers, and they're very valuable. And parks are amazing. Our national parks are amazing. Have you ever fucking been to Yosemite? Do you have any idea how much of the land in America is national parks? We have a rainforest in Olympia. If you look at the USA as a map, the upper left-hand corner is a fucking rainforest. The USA has a rainforest. And then you got the Badlands, and then you got, Devil's Rock and Yellowstone, and I mean, the list goes on, It is amazing. So taxes are what pay for the rangers to fucking make sure that the fucking toilets are empty and the garbage cans get emptied and that people don't shit all over the land in our great country. Now, taxes also go to fucking bombing, fundamental terrorism in North Africa or Syria or Yemen or wherever the fuck we're going next. Although there is some hope that Trump is pulling out of Syria, that seems to actually be happening. We'll see if it really does. We'll see. This idea that you are free, and to know that is so important. So important. And you're not sovereign, because no man is sovereign under God. You were made by someone more powerful than you. And if you don't get that, God bless you. I hope you figure it out. But you are a solipsistic, arrogant motherfucker. And maybe you're not really an Oedipal, that shit, but like just the colloquial term, like you are an arrogant fucking bastard. You're an atheistic, reductive, materialistic fucking schlup if you think that God is not more powerful than you, or if you think that you are God. Now, you can be a reflection of God. You can be a microcosmic creation of God. You can be a son of Adam, but you are not that which made the world. Can you make a giraffe? Go home tonight and make a giraffe, and then make a whale and a shark and a fucking hippo and the rainforest and fucking elm trees and a grove of aspens. Do you know that a grove of aspens is a single organism? They have a subterranean root system that's interconnected. So say like one aspen tree has like more nutrients and another one has less. They like text each other underground, And he's like, yo, let me get those nutrients. And the other one's like, yo, I got you. And they send him over. They behave as a single organism, a grove of aspens. So go home and make a grove of aspens, design that, and then tell me that you're fucking God. Otherwise, shut the front door, humble your ass, get down on your knees and pray. And that's my little rant about that. No man is sovereign under God. Now, no man should be subjugated by any other external force, tyrannical or otherwise. So nobody out here is fucking better than you or higher than you or fucking cooler than you. You are a fucking divine fractal, you know? Ride the wave, bro. So that's that kind of shit. And what else? Should we look at the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times? Let's see. Seeking wall, Trump builds ill will instead. This is the New York Times article by Michael D. Shear. Let's see. Washington used to know how to have a serious debate about border security. Republicans demanded more money for Border Patrol agents and necessary fences. Democrats argued for better surveillance technology and more resources at the ports of entry. The two parties squabbled over how much to spend, how to pay for it, and how it all fit into the broader struggle to overhaul the nation's broken immigration system. But President Trump has demolished the decades-old bipartisan understanding about how to bargain over the border. In Mr. Trump's world, there are no alternatives that can form the basis of a legislative give and take, much as his allies and adversaries might hope for them. For the president, the only way to stop what he calls an onslaught, quote-unquote, of illegal immigrants is to erect a massive concrete or steel barrier across the nearly 2,000-mile border with Mexico. Quote, drones and all the rest are wonderful and lots of fun, but it is only a good old-fashioned wall that works, he tweeted last month. By conjuring images of a towering stone edifice around a medieval fortress and branding those on the outside as invaders threatening to bring crime, drugs, and disease to the United States, Mr. Trump has transformed what used to be a complicated, nuanced negotiation into a take-it-or-leave-it demand laced with xenophobia that has shuttered nearly a quarter of the... Should we finish this article? Let's finish it. And then I got lots to say about it. Continuing on page 17, I'm doing this the old-fashioned way. Purported xenophobia continued on page 17. Government for weeks. Quote, he turns a debate that is fundamentally about more or less measured in dollars and makes it a debate that is wall or not, said Frank Sherry, a pro-immigration activist who has battled over border security for decades in the nation's capital. Quote, it's become cartoonish, unquote. For decades, immigration has been an emotional and bitterly fought battle in Washington and around the country. But even so, there has been a consensus among most Republicans and Democrats that securing the southern border requires a mix of costly strategies. That included a large number of Border Patrol agents posted at key points along the vast stretch, land from San Diego to Brownsville, Texas, fences in urban areas and barriers to stop vehicles from crossing, and high-tech surveillance gear to alert the border agents to the presence of migrants and drugs. Until Mr. Trump was elected, the sticking points had largely been about other parts of the broader immigration debate, cracking down on people who stay longer than their visas allow, preventing companies from hiring illegal immigrants, expanding opportunities for legal immigration, and providing status to those already in the country illegally, including immigrants brought to the United States as children. Such a comprehensive deal is completely out of reach now, but Mr. Trump's behavior during the past several weeks suggests that even reaching a smaller, more targeted agreement on security arrangements at the border is more elusive than ever before. What do you think? Do you want to finish it? There's probably 300 more words. The current government shutdown, which began just before Christmas, is now the longest one ever in United States history. In the 22 days since the government shut down, there have been virtually no negotiations by congressional lawmakers or the White House. There have been no marathon, pizza-fueled sessions in back rooms at the Capitol. Lawmakers have not traded detailed proposals with each other. Mr. Trump refused to give an inch in his Oval Office speech and has spent more time in an extended photo op at the border than he has at the negotiating table. I think that's a little bit bullshit. I mean, he fucking spent New Year's and Christmas at the White House. It has all left veterans of past border debates exacerbated and frustrated. Let's see. All right, let's just read the whole thing. Why not? Quote, "We know how to secure borders," said Alex Conant, a Republican strategist who was a top aide to Senator Marco Rubio in 2013 when the Republican senator from Florida helped lead the last major bipartisan effort to overhaul immigration. Quote, "The 2013 immigration plan had what everybody agreed was the most effective way possible to secure borders and other points of entry," end quote. With the backing of President Barack Obama, a bipartisan group of 8 senators that year succeeded in passing a comprehensive overhaul of the nation's immigration system. But the legislation, which passed with 68 votes, prompted fierce opposition from conservative Republicans, who condemned it as amnesty for 11 million undocumented immigrants. It was never brought up for vote in the House. Still, the Senate legislation was an indication of where the two parties could agree on border security. It doubled the number of Border Patrol agents from 19,000 to almost 40,000, an increase that even the authors of the proposal agreed was overkill, but was designed mostly as an enticement to win Republican support. Senators from both parties also agreed on money for technological improvements along the border. The bill allocated $3.2 billion for drones, infrared ground sensors, and long-range thermal imaging cameras to give Border Patrol agents advance notice when migrants cross illegally, especially at night. It also included money for an electronic employment verification system for all employers and upgrades at airports to catching immigrants who overstay their visas. And the consensus included some physical barriers, what Mr. Trump might call walls and others would call fencing. Years earlier, the Secure Fence Act of 2006 allocated money to build about 650 miles of barriers along the border. The 2013 bill, had it been signed into law, would have increased that total to almost 700 miles, mostly along the eastern half of the border with Mexico. Almost all of the fencing that Congress has approved has already been built. In populated areas, the fence is tall and steel or chain link and designed to keep people out. In other places, the barrier is nothing more than short metal poles spaced out to keep vehicles from driving through, or low wooden fences that run alongside pedestrian paths. In 2011, a government accountability office report concluded that despite 649 miles of completed fencing, the, quote, southwest border continues to be vulnerable to cross-border illegal activity, including the smuggling of humans and illegal narcotics. The report recognized that barriers have mostly not been built in the vast empty stretches in Texas where rivers and mountains as natural borders have prevented cars from crossing into the United States and made the trek by foot difficult, if not impossible. But Mr. Trump seizes on conclusions like the GAO reports about the continued influx of illegal immigrants at the southern border as proof that he is right in demanding a continuous wall. In remarks to reports after a meeting with Democrats at the White House earlier this month, Mr. Trump insisted that the only way to prevent immigrants from crossing between the 25 official ports of entry is to erect fences everywhere else. Quote, "We can't let gaps, because if you have gaps, those people are going to turn their vehicles, or the gangs, they're going to be coming in through those gaps." I added the B. The president said, end quote, "and we cannot let that happen," end quote. But there continue to be questions about the wisdom of building a wall from, quote, sea to shining sea, even from inside Mr. Trump's administration. A different GAO report released last year examined the preliminary cost estimates by Customs and Border Protection of what it would cost to extend the wall along the entire border. The report criticized the border agency, saying that the cost estimates did not take into account that costs would vary depending on the kind of terrain where they were built. In recent days, the rhetoric between the two sides has become more strident than ever. Mr. Trump and his Republican allies have pointed out that Democrats supported fencing in the past, though they purposefully ignore the context of those votes and the difference between the fencing that Democrats supported and the all-or-nothing wall that the president has demanded. Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California has called the wall, quote, immoral, end quote, cementing her position against it. Quote, "At this point, the idea we could overlook the rhetoric and get a deal done is much harder," end quote, Mr. Sherry, the pro-immigration activist, said. End of article. All right. So 3.5 billion was passed under Obama to build fencing, which is a form of wall, which is exactly what Trump's talking about. And it seems like, knocking Trump for not taking this seriously, I think is kind of bullshit. And personally, he doesn't like the term. I noticed that he said, I don't like the term wall. I don't like the term government shutdown. He prefers strike because he's on strike against. There was a $250 billion proposal to fund the government. All right. $5 billion of it is earmarked for border security. 250 billion, $5 billion. All right. Of the $5 billion, 2.4, or no, what is it? 1.4 was agreed upon, and 3.6 was not agreed upon. So the vast majority of this government funding bill is being hung up on a questionable 3.6 billion over border wall security. Now, down by the Rio Grande, it's really, really difficult to get through there. Probably doesn't need to be a wall from sea to, quote, sea to shining sea. I think the New York Times is being, well, in this case, the article, journalist Michael D. Shear, either by quoting someone or having said it himself, I don't recall which way it went, but saying sea to shining sea is like a little bit incendiary, hyperbolic. Really, we're just looking at a secure physical wall across the areas that are geographically accessible. And this is not an outlandish statement. Getting high-tech geothermal cameras to let you know when people have ran into America is way stupider than putting up a wall that won't let people run into America. Okay? And now, before I go on my pro-wall rant, I want to acknowledge the alternate viewpoint, which is that the majority of illegal immigrants in the USA, if I'm not mistaken from my research, are immigrants with legal visas who stay longer than their visa allows. But that can be cracked down on just by tracking down, because they have legal visas. So they're in the system. We know how long they were supposed to be here. We can go find them and either set them up with another visa or deport them. But what's going on with this human trafficking thing and this drugs is a big deal. Drugs are fucking up. Fentanyl is fucking up our country. Oxycontin, heroin. These things are fucking up our country. I'm not saying they're all coming overland from Mexico, but some of it fucking is. And more important than the drug issue, which is responsible for so many deaths and hits so close to my heart and is so terrible. And we need to stop this drug issue. Even worse and more heinous is the human trafficking thing. This is so terrible. This is happening in our world. Why would we want to be complicit with human traffickers? All right? So you can have all the geothermal and drones you want, and we can take pictures of all the human traffickers bringing in humans and selling them, and you know what that stuff is. It's largely labor trade and sex trade, and it's largely underage. And that's disgusting, and it's terrible, and it's got to stop, okay? And having a nice geothermal, knowing how hot some human trafficker's body is, doesn't fucking stop them from running across something that doesn't have a physical barrier. So building a physical wall to stop human trafficking and drug trafficking is not a bad idea. So I support Trump's strike. And from what I've heard from him is that the people he's spoken with at the Border Patrol who work for the government also support it, even though they're on furlough, which is working, if I'm not mistaken, it was working without pay during this government strike, partial government strike, a quote-unquote shutdown. So, look, walls are Great Wall of China. The Vatican, one of the most, in case you know, the City of London, Washington, D.C., and the Vatican are three sovereign states. Washington, D.C. is not in the USA. Think about that. Go do some research. The Vatican has a wall. They have a wall. Catholicism is the biggest faction of Christianity in the world. Next to, I think, Eastern Orthodox, but I forget. But yeah, they have a wall. They have their own legal processing system. Nobody bitches about that. And all of a sudden, USA wants to put up a wall just to prevent illegal immigrants. Now, this is the thing that people are like, oh, America and Statue of Liberty and this country is built by immigrants. Yes, it is. It is built by immigrants who came here legally. There's no reason to change that. Just because now the dollar is strong and our economy is strong and we've reversed a lot of the economic trends caused by Obama. I'm not saying we're perfect. I'm not saying I like our foreign war policy, but I do think things are improving and I am optimistic. And I don't see any reason why preventing illegal immigrants from entering our country should be such a hot button issue with Democrats. And like I've mentioned before, I am nonpartisan. So I'm apolitical. I want to weigh both sides, both opinions, and just depending on the issue, let you know where I stand. And that could change as more information comes to light. So I'm an open-headed thinker, level-headed thinker. And I would encourage you to do the same. This idea that it's wrong to keep illegal immigrants from coming into our country in a physical manner, with a physical barrier. I mean, that's what stops people. Walls. Walls are what keep people in prison. Walls are what keep people out of the Vatican. Walls are what kept invaders from entering China. Walls work. What good is it of us to have drone footage of people illegally running across American soil? Oh, great. There they go. Where are they going? Well, let's just keep watching. Maybe they'll get away, maybe they won't. But there they are. I can see them through my TV screen, my video monitor. That's kind of stupid. So I wouldn't, if you're one of these cats out there that's super anti-Trump, I would just say, hey, the guy's being, I think, logical. And not backing down on the issue, I mean, isn't a bad political move. He's up for re-election in 2 years, and his constituency wants to see him be strong on border security. And I like it. I think that a lot of shady fucking shit has happened in this country. And for the first time in a long time, it looks like some of that stuff is being weeded out. So I reminded of the Trump tweet where he was like, someone was talking about Bezos got divorced, Amazon CEO. And Trump said, like, Jeff Bezos has a lot bigger things to worry about. I don't know what that means, but I just liked hearing that. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I'm not that political, but lately I've been taking my time to understand, or maybe a better word is to learn about the process of government. And I know ment means mind and govern means control, so obviously we're talking mind control, but allow me to remind you that some of the greatest thinkers of our government have encouraged us to be self-ruling, and that if we cannot do that, then we will be ruled. Similar to how our police system works. If you cannot, in the Bible it says, against gentility and kindness there is no law. So you don't need law if you are gentle and kind. But if you are mean and aggressive and want to hurt people with your decisions, well, you will be governed, bitch. and you will be regulated upon. Otherwise, you're free. You're free to do God's will, which is to be a divinely awesome, cool person, love your fucking neighbor, and be dope. And no one's ever going to stop you from doing that. There's no law against being awesome. So these people that are super anti-government, man, like, oh, fuck the system. I think you got it twisted, dude. I really don't think you grok what it means to have strictures in place to control people that don't know how to control themselves. And now, does that mean that I think that the CIA wasn't involved in killing JFK? No. Does that mean that I am fooled by these lone wolf shooters that are conveniently either killed right after they make an attack or discovered to have operated on their own? Look at the Vegas shooting. Look behind that stuff. No. So obviously I know that there is, or not know is, a better word would be, I'm open to the notion that collusion is afoot for elements of mind control. Now, again, this comes back to the idea that if you can be controlled, you will be controlled. And I don't justify false flags, and I don't justify fake news. However, I do think that the code of law and the color of law is designed to improve our society, and that these were ideals that were lofty and noble and of a divine origin. And that, yes, maybe we have, like the prodigal son, strayed from our source. And when I say we, I mean perhaps the quote-unquote citizens and the quote-unquote government. Now, I don't think that that is a blanket statement that can be laid upon all people. So I really encourage you. I am going to take another note. I'm going to leave the quote from the president that said, if you cannot govern yourself, you will be governed. That is a very strong and beautiful quote. Let me take a note. Man of my word. And what else? So that's political stuff. All right, I'm going to move into artistic stuff. So I finished West of the Edge. I got it printed. I'm holding it in my hand as I speak. It's beautiful. I need to make a few micro edits. There's some spelling errors and a couple tiny plot points that I need to change. If you're just listening now and you haven't heard past podcasts, West of the Edge is a fiction novella that I recently wrote. I wrote a good chunk of it a couple years ago, and then I wrote the last chunk of it this last year. And I just read it. It's about a 2-hour read. It's 130 pages. Might end up being like 140 or 50. And it's pretty good. I'm really happy with it. And just because I love you guys, I'm going to read you a little excerpt from West of the Edge. And I hope you like it. See you, Fernando. Bye, P. P popped up and whisked himself out of the room. Once outside, he felt uncaged, like a freed bird. He descended the flight of stairs like water down a mountain, unlocked his bike, and began to pedal steadily up Electric Avenue toward Rose Avenue. He biked past an old Mexican man pushing a shopping cart full of discarded items. P could always hear those carts when he thought of Venice, and the strong arms that pushed them, and the determined feet that moved them, the industrious, leather-weathered and wrinkled Mexican men who retrieved your discarded Coca-Cola cans and Evian water bottles, who dove into your trash bins and recycling containers, and who lived off this city's detritus extruded at the gills from the gallbladder of consumerism, trading in refuse for small metallic coins, gathering them, sending them, heavily taxed by Western Union, to Guatemala, Ecuador, or El Salvador, gathering currency in the U.S. like a toxic-eating algae hell-bent on transmuting a city's waste, this Los Angeles. Peace saw Mexico in his surroundings. He heard it on the AM radio. He saw it at the yard parties and quinceañeras. He felt it on the beach, where on weekends 1 or 2 sellers of fresh fruit can still be found, strong, stout Mexican women holding kebabs of fruit in the hot noonday sun, towel over their shoulders to support the load, sweat lined beneath their arms, walking around pasty white Angelinos dreaming of the sun. These fruit sellers, where here only 1 or 2, a vestige of the Mexico that once stood, a trickle down from the thousands of fruit sellers that lined the Baja, but the high guarded towers and well-maintained walls and bullets and rape and violence and all the pain put into a passport or stuffed under a fence or submerged in a sunken ship could not stop what is the essence of a land from being itself. These strong, beautiful, and brilliant Mexicans, their deep ancestral skin and soft Latin-tongued Virgin de Guadalupes lined the shelves of the mercados where they bought Bud Light by the case, or Tecate, or Imperial, and drank as families that would not be ushered from their homeland. They perched around beaten-up old trucks drinking beer, blaring Spanish love songs from an AM radio, its familiar crackle somehow a sign of cultural nobility. P mused on Los Angeles as a name, and thought how all names were kinds of maps, and that American was no less Mexico than the USA, that Los Angeles was a Mexican city with a Mexican name. It was our American Mexico. We'd run it over with our imagination and the silver screen and a coke habit. L.A. was a Mexican desert scrubbed over by things like the Valley, cookie-cutter houses and porn star green lawns watered from reservoirs hundreds of miles away, water wars, Chinatown. Some good came out of all of this, a lot of bad, but this land wasn't the USA or Mexico or even America. That beautiful America joined from the deciduous forests of the northern region to the holy coasts of the Isthmus of Panama, on down through the southern lungs and jungles to the polished urbana of Buenos Aires, where Argentinian poets once realized that they were people simply standing on an earth. Indeed, P thought, the map is not the territory. P reminded himself that he was standing on God's land, in a word called Los Angeles, that was once a word called Mexico. Prior to the Treaty of Guadalupe in 1848, following the war between Mexican and U.S. forces, this was Mexico. And when all that north of the Rio Grande became the property of the U.S., and all that Wyoming, and all that New Mexico, and all that Arizona, and all that golden California, when all that holy Mexican land became U.S. soil, its occupants could move to the newly defined boundaries, or they could become U.S. citizens. Well over 90% of them stayed. So that is our Mexico. We are Mexico. We never left ourselves. P himself was the descendants of Norway and Ireland and Germany, and a ship that came here with his great-great-great-grandparents called the USS Queen Mary, who journeyed inland to flat upper middle America of farm and potato and corn. He was still waters run deep and bundle up for the winter. He was I can see my breath and I can't feel my fingers. P came from those ice-capped tundras of the north, the lands of Minnesota and Michigan, the truly grand and noble bodies of still water upon this earth, friends of Siberia and Mongolia, friends of Tibet and Sweden, friends of Quebec, Greenland, and Alaska. He was tall and pale and built to be warm. So that's a little excerpt from my new novella, West of the Edge. It takes place over a single day, November 8th, 2015, in Los Angeles, following an unexplained UFO that was seen over the skies of Los Angeles, and as far east as Arizona, as far northeast as Nevada, as far north as San Francisco. So P saw this unexplained event. He's kind of in a post-war state, and the novella, which is just a name for a small novel, follows him through a day. And it's very bohemian and poetic, and he's talking about film and cinema with his buddies, and that little piece I read you about Mexico and the land. Let my dog in again. Come on, T. And then he goes on and basically he has revelations about the shape of the earth, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but he gets kind of recruited by the dark club, and then kind of goes in there as a spy and kind of exposes some of the underbelly of humanity. And then it all takes place over a single day. And I'm going to sell it for $10 on my website. And then I'm going to sell an audiobook for $5. And the audiobook is just going to be, you'll buy it on my website for $5, and I'm going to send you a link to an unlisted YouTube video, and you can listen to it. And I'll also put it up on Amazon, and you can get it on Kindle and stuff, but I prefer you buy from me. And I got this great print and ship company, so there'll be a link on the website. You'll click it, and they'll print it for you and ship it to you, and you can hold it in your hand. And I designed the cover, and I did all the fonts, and I laid out the book, and I'm pretty darn proud of it. It's actually pretty darn good. And so you have that to look forward to. So, that's the story of P, and he's just kind of a, shoelace poet, bohemian philosopher kind of guy. And it starts out like he's all like super science and I love fucking space. And then he becomes a geocentrist over the course of the day. So you get to kind of like see how that happens. But he's not like fully converted. He just gets like the intel that will lead to that. Because I really believe that any cosmological shift in a person's life is a minimum 3 to 6 month process. Minimum. How could one undergo such foundational realignments in a day? And anyone that would expect another to do such things that quickly, I think, is asking too much of them. And so that's west of the edge. And what else is going on? I'm doing joke a day now, so I'm getting back into stand-up, and I'll leave a link below. Fuck, I got to take another note. To my joke a day playlist, and I update it whenever I want. But I'm writing a joke a day, and then I record them when I get a chance in a clump, and then upload them. So I wrote a couple in the last few days, and you can look forward to seeing those when I get those done and ready for you. And I'm going to stand up soon in my area. I was doing stand-up in LA for a few years. And then I kind of slacked off on it because comics are jaded and depressed and boring. But there's a lot of beauty in there too. And some of the comics that make me laugh are the most brilliant people I've ever met. So, there's the bitter and the sweet. I didn't necessarily mean for a large portion of this podcast to be about Trump's wall, but whatever. Anything else going on? This Tartaria thing is just kind of blowing my mind. So I really do hope you guys watch that first link I put. I really want you to see that. And in the future, I'm probably going to do video podcasts, but I'm just kind of slow grow, just let it grow at the rate I'm comfortable with. And it's not about having a big amount of listeners right now. It's more about being like, okay, this is something I do, and I do it, and it's done, And I've noticed in my analytics, I don't get a lot of traction at my channel, but I've noticed that because it's an hour-long content, that I'm getting the most minutes watched on my podcast. Not like the fucking hip-hop album that I put out, which took way more time. But, it took me a week to get a song done, and it's a 3-minute song, and you listen to it, and that's 3 minutes of watch time. So it does not compute. What else? China didn't land on the dark side of the moon. Check out my last episode if you haven't heard that. NASA has not found Ultima Thule on the edge of the universe, 4 billion fucking miles away. I'll tell you guys one of my jokes is, and then you'll see it maybe later on a video, is, so I've been looking into conspiracy theories, and I started looking into this idea that we didn't go to the moon. You guys ever heard of this? So I dug in, I did some research, and I think I cracked it. The moon is made of cheese. And all the astronauts are rats. And then, like, if the joke doesn't work and they just look at me like, who the fuck is this guy? I'll just, like, lean into the mic and go, rats. And then if that doesn't work, then I'll look at him and say, too cheesy? So that's one of the jokes. Sneak peek. You got the sneak peek joke here on the Frank America podcast. Episode 4. What else? I've been listening to some other podcasts. Just to try to get a feel for how people roll. It seems like everyone's doing video podcasting, but I'll get there when I want to. When I feel like I have a little area that I'd like to put on camera. With the right posters and tchotchkes on the desk and all that. Until then, it's just you and me, baby. Just audio. Give you that straight voice. And the whole 200-year-old Tartaria thing falls in line with this whole 432 to 440 hertz shift. It's like right around the same time that they standardized the frequency and made it non-resonant with the human body and the earth. Fucking interesting, man. Like, think about that. Like, if all music we're listening to is designed to not be resonant with the body, and everyone's listening to music, like, where does that put you? We're all like lopsided bobblehead dolls who don't know how to walk a straight line. Because there's all these kind of forces at work. Teddy, chill. And that's one of the reasons I like having a dog around. Is a dog is really aware, not necessarily about this 432 whatever thing, but like they're really aware of all the frequencies that are happening around you. So sure, it could just be a squirrel, but like they also sense energy and they know like if something needs to be barked at. And I think that's like really healthy. And yeah, so how do we reclaim our bodies, our minds, our sounds, our music, our ideas, our names, our countries, our world, our place here? How do we protect our children? How do we love our families that think we're retarded for believing the earth is flat? How do we do these things, And that's part of the goal. Just figure that out. Cause we ain't seen no curvature all over this great big world. They told us that we lived on a sphere. Now it don't seem likely. Well, is it like me to stay up nightly tip of the beak shining oh so brightly, a sight we behold together like birds of a feather in bad weather. 'Cause we ain't seen no, we ain't seen no, we ain't seen no, we ain't seen no, we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no, we ain't seen no curvature. All over this great big world. Get 'em, T. Told you that we lived on a sphere. Now it's hashtag Furbear, hashtag Glowback. I'ma hit you with the true deja vu. Me and my crew always knew, flat through and through. While they snooze to the news, it's in our dues what we do. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. We ain't seen no curvature. All over this great big world. They told us that we lived on a sphere. Now it don't seem likely. Well, game one is done. New round, same sun. New round, new tongue. Wait, we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no curvature. 'Cause we ain't seen no. We ain't seen no curvature. All over this great big world. They told us that we lived on a sphere. Now it don't seem likely. It's an oldie but goodie. Hey, Titi. Hi, buddy. Yeah. I know I sang good because when I was done, my dog came over and stood right underneath my legs. And I feel good. I feel real, natural, like who I am. I was telling this to my family the other night. So I was like, look, I finally feel like I have a vague idea who I am, where I am, and why I'm here. And that's some pretty awesome stuff. Some pretty awesome stuff. I was telling my dad the other day, I don't know, that might be too deep. Might be too deep for this podcast. I was like, I'm a non-resident alien in possession of U.S. citizenship. He was like, what? How could you not be a resident? Where do you live? I was like, I live in my body. Where do you live? In your car? In your house? And he laughed. He's like, that's a pretty good argument. It's like, it's not an argument, Dad. It's true. I'm an infinite spiritual being inhabiting a temporal physical body for a brief period of time with an ellipse on either end, God willing. Because we ain't seen no curvature. T. T, you want to say something to the podcast? Nice. Shake it out for him. So that's about it. We've got about a minute left. Let's do a little housekeeping. I'll take a note. I'm going to leave a link to where you can buy my album. I'm going to leave a link to where you can buy my book from last year called Flatlandia, which is a collection of essays on the subject of flat Earth. And I'll also leave a link where you can stream the audiobook for free. If you're into it, send up a prayer that I find the right type of work that can support me continuing to do my art. I just want to say thank you to all the truth seekers out there and all the people that love themselves and are doing their best to make it in this realm and to take care of the people they love. And I know it's not easy, and my heart goes out to you and my prayers go out to you. And I pray that you will be righteous in your path and blessed and held close by God. And may His angels fly to you and keep you safe and secure, and all that you love be safe and secure as you walk to do your best in this world and to learn and to grow together. Thank you so much to each of you. This is episode 4. I wonder where it'll be in episode 40. It's the Frank America Podcast. I'm your host, Frank America, signing out.
Chillin' on the holy plain, puffin' on the Mary Jane. Son of man, if asked my name, wondering if you're the same. Thunder in the falling rain, under skin like Kurt Cobain. Can't complain, he on a plane, my stand's the same on this terrain. Bless Aurora Borealis, yes, the stars are Polaris. The Coriolis is a fallacy, the stationary palace. I'm in the Taj Mahal with the Rebellies Mahal, and the devil's looking small. There's no curvature at all when they preach about the ball. Get you thinking that you crawl, insignificant and small, when in fact you're walking tall. Bless Aurora Borealis, yes, the stars are Polaris. The Coriolis is a fallacy, the stationary palace. The scientists, why the rising with level with my eye and shit, 20 miles high with it. Is NASA fucking lying? It's ISS surviving in temps that melt aluminum, live streaming on their wireless. Bless Aurora Borealis, yes, the stars are Polaris. The Coriolis is a fallacy.